Howdy YouTube folks, it's your friendly neighborhood girl Ellen, bringing you another video. And as you know, I've been selling stuff, not only to liquidate, but also to save up the money to fix up my sweet Maggie, the blue 1989 Dodge Caravan, which I'm pretty happy about. Excuse me. And don't mind if I take a drink from this cool pink sippy cup I got at Michael's. Yes, in the state we live in, we do still have a Michael's craft store. I don't know how many of those are actually still functioning, but we have one. As far as to my knowledge, it's the only Michael's craft store. It was sad to see the Joann's Fabrics go out of business, but it is what it is. Anyways, I thought I'd bring you this video because I've thought of something I've always wanted to do all my life, and I thought it'd be interesting to share with you folks. Once I get the Dodge Caravan fixed up, obviously, and I get a part-time job and I've saved up enough money, and because of being on Social Security, I have to be careful how much money I make, more though than what they allow me to a month. So it'll be a very part-time job, probably retail store. But anyways, I'm thinking about saving up a bunch of money. And yes, it's a risk and a gamble, but I'm taking my sweet Maggie on a road trip to see different parts of America. And for one guy that's watching, who I'm friends with, who now watches my YouTube through my dead name Facebook account, he knows who he is. He'll see this, so that's why I'm kind of chuckling and smiling, you know. I want to go visit him, and I won't say where he lives, but, you know, for those of you who are watching my YouTube channel, I want to go visit him, and he's kind of a, more of a car guy than, more of a car person, I should say, and like stuff than I am, but it is cool to see the stuff that he has. I mean, not that I don't like car stuff, but me, I only really, like I've said, really only got into the mechanical side of things. If you watched older videos, out of necessity, so mine's not really like a full-on passion of having the biggest car collection on earth. And not saying that he necessarily does, but it would just be cool to go visit him and see his rides, because he's really into the 50s Chevys, the bubble nose and stuff like that. Or the Chevy bubble looking cars. 51 through 54, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. He could tell you more about that than me. I know a little bit about him because I know a little bit about 50s cars, like Chevys and stuff, the basics, but I don't know enough as to tell you what engine, what model, what this, that, or the other, and he could definitely on those Chevys because he's a guru. And he's actually got a pretty cool red Chevy that he's shown me pictures of. That he's done. But yes, it'd be cool to go see him and get a photo with him next to, he's got an older like 80s Dodge pickup he's told me about, and it'd be cool to kind of just take a photo of my van, that, you know, because my van's late, even though it's late 80s, like last year of the 80s. It'd still be kind of cool to have a picture of me and him standing next to our rides side by side. His 80s Dodge truck. I believe he said it was from the 80s. I could be wrong. He could also tell you that again if he would know more about it than I do, but I remember him showing it to me, and I'm pretty sure he said it was 80s. I shouldn't be definite on that, but still, it's pretty cool. He's been working on it, and it would just be cool to get a side by side. I've also always wanted to try, because Wisconsin is known as the cheese capital of America, and I've always wanted to try like true cheese curds from Wisconsin. I've also wanted to go to the Longaburger, I believe it is actually called, the the factory to see the factory building, because I believe it's still standing even though it's no longer in business. If you know, you know, the Wicker Basket Company that made those like wicker picnic baskets, and it's just a giant like picnic basket, I believe it is. That would also be cool to see. And then there was a, I'm trying to remember who the guy was. He was very famous, and he made a there's a museum of like animatronic like puppet things, like old, I want to say Ion Fletcher, but I don't know, I forget, something Fletcher I believe, or Max Fletcher. I'm not 100% sure. He was I believe he was an architect and designed the house he lived in on the property, but had a museum full of like children's animatronic, like stuff like that, you know, where it's like the mechanical puppets moving, and it's a whole museum that you can go visit. And anyways, it's so cool, and I would love to see that. I also don't know if they have it in existence anymore, and I'm pretty sure that it was a museum for a while, and it may have been in like New York State somewhere. I can't remember, but I have some of the vinyl, and I can show them to you. And for those of you who are familiar with the Christmas music box thing of the olden days, I've always loved the old Christmas music boxes. You know, the ones that had the giant like saw blade record that had the square rectangular grooves cut into however the bars were, and some of them had the saw blade design on them, and some of them were just a round metal disc, and it had that little like spirally shaft thing with the spirals on it that would spin on and make the music. Well, anyways, I can grab one here in just a minute and show you, which I will actually do, because that'll give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. Yeah, they made obviously there's different music boxes that have ever been made, but this one right here is the one I'm referring to, that has the round disc with the holes. And right down here, I'm pretty sure that they made a museum out of her stuff, and I honestly don't know if she's still alive. I forget if she's still alive or if she passed away, but I believe all this stuff is in a museum, and it's called the Rita Ford Museum, where it's all of her Christmas music boxes from all around the world. And I don't know if it's still a thing. I could be all wet. For those of you who live nearby it and know where it is and could tell me what it is, that'd be greatly appreciated in the comment section, to see if it even did exist still. But it would be cool, because I really like these. I have another one that's music box that I believe is also Rita Ford, but it's mainly this one right here. But I believe this album right here has all of these shown in it, playing, so different ones on all of these. But basically every one of these music box albums I have are just a repeat of the same ones. It's just on the different units. This one's kind of neat because it's the birdhouse. But I do like this little organ grinder with a monkey sitting on it. That's kind of cool too, because you don't see stuff like that anymore. Not that I was around back when organ grinders were a thing on the streets, but it's just neat to think that at one time there were these guys called organ grinders that sometimes would have dancing monkeys. And it was legal to have a monkey at that time as a pet. And you could go around a city that you lived in and make coins, money, whatever you could get for to live off of just by doing this. And obviously a lot of the monkeys were dressed up in this circus type uniform, and they were trained monkeys that were professionally trained by these guys to be mild-mannered and go around and collect the change in the cups like you see in the movies. I believe that was an actual real thing, and so it's kind of neat to think that there were people like that around the world at one time. Now you wouldn't even think about that because it's no longer there, but it would just be cool to see that, because that's just something I've always been interested in. Automatronics I kind of like, and I recently remember watching a documentary on YouTube, in recent years I should say, of a guy in France that takes like old clocks and different gear parts, and he builds different like automatons or automatronic type. I think they call them automatons. Out of the old clocks, they're like moving robotic little peoples and scenes, and that's what he'll do out of like I said, out of old clock gears and clocks and different things like that, and he'll reuse the pieces, and then he'll take like copper flashing or whatever to make the skin, or like, to make it look like a person with like its face and the skin, and solder it to different parts of the clock. And he's French, and that's kind of neat. And I forget the documentary. I'll have to look it up again, but it just popped up in my head. And it was either on Tubi or on YouTube, but I want to say YouTube. But it would just be cool to see something like this. There's a lot of things I also want to see. The International Doll Museum would be kind of cool, because I grew up with grandparents who were collectors, a grandmother who collected dolls, and a grandfather who collected just toys in general and would buy dolls for my grandmother. So it'd be kind of cool to go to the International Doll Museum. There's a lot of things I do want to see, and I think it would be a good cross-country trip in my Van Maggie. Now, that's not to say I couldn't have mechanical failures along the way. I am going to bring tools and some spare parts if I have them. Make sure I have a few of the non-perishables, because I can foresee that, and make sure I have enough money in case I have to go to a mechanic and get things fixed. But I'm really thinking about doing that because it would just be so much fun. Just clear my thoughts, because this year has been so turbulent with the loss of my cat in these recent years, the loss of my brother, and the loss of my grandmother. So it'd just be nice to clear my head and go on a me vacation. I've offered to let my mom come along too if she wants, but she said she would be fine if it was just a me needed to do thing. And I really haven't offered it to my brother's family, but I don't know if they want to cram in an old 89 Dodge Caravan across country. But if my mom wanted to go, that would be great. But obviously, I do not want my narcissistic father with me, because this is also part of the reason why I'm trying to get away, so I can have a little bit of a break, because I just need that to clear my head, so when I come back to my household, I can say I've seen things and done things in the world. Also, another trip I've really wanted to do someday is two places I want to hit is Canada, the whole Canadian region, and also France, because even though I'm Canadian descent, France is still a form of French, and I would love to see the French quarters in France, and like see Paris and see the Eiffel Tower, because that's something that's always been a dream of mine, is to visit the Eiffel Tower and actually go to the top of it and get to experience it. And I don't know if I've said this in a video before, but see the birthplace of Napoleon, because that would be interesting, even though he was a French leader. We can all debate that. It would still be pretty cool to see that. But definitely, like, going to Canada would be something on my bucket list as well, being Canadian descent. French Canadian. Quebec Canada, as some of us say. And oddly enough, my mom's parents grew up around French-talking people, but they didn't really learn French. But my dad's mother, who was fluent French, was a French-Canadian, and his dad was Irish, I want to say. Anyways, either Irish or Scottish, I forget that part. I know I should remember, it's my family heritage. But anyways, she could speak fluid French-Canadian. It was like crazy. And I wished I had learned a lot from her, but I had to learn my French-Canadian by studying it myself, and that's what I've been doing. But I kind of wish that while she was alive, I was able to inquisit her, but I just never did. Because I know she would have taught me a lot of Canadian French, Francais, but it is what it is. But yeah, that's really why I want to go to Canada and experience that whole experience, because that being my ancestry is something so deep rooted and important to me, and also being able to see where my Native American ancestors lived, because my ancestry is traced back to, believe it or not, an Indian princess named Star, who was through my, I believe, was looked up through my dad's family, through his mother's side. And I just think that's so cool, and it'd be kind of cool to visit the Native American reservation in Canada just to get an experience of what that's like and see the back areas, because I had a few relatives that still lived in Canada. An uncle that I can think of that is no longer with us. I believe he passed away, sadly, and I never really got to know him, but he I think he was one of my grandmother's brothers, and he lived up in Canada. I remember as a kid, I think we were going to go to a birthday party of his once, and I was pretty little, but we got turned around, so we didn't end up making it. And they used to come to family gatherings when I was younger, but I didn't, like I said, I didn't know him that well. And they could speak fluent French too, but yeah, it would have been so cool to would be so cool to go up to Canada, not necessarily to reconnect with those people, just to go experience Montreal, experience all it has to offer. My brother, who's still living, has been to Montreal, and he said there's a place there that it's like one of the oldest sandwich shops in Montreal. And I've never really had pastrami, so I can't say it. I think I maybe had it once, and I wasn't crazy about it, but I know that's controversial. Some people like those like ultimate sub sandwiches, but it's an experience, and I would probably go to try it. Now, if I went to Paris, I definitely want to try escargot, because that's something that's always been on my mind, and I've never had it. Even though I'm not that French descent, I'm Canadian French descent still. It would be cool to experience the escargot, because I I heard it's very much an acquired taste, but I want to be able to say I've had that in my life, so I can, if anything were in the event to ever happen to me, I can say, well, I've been there and I was able to see that through my life when I'm recalling my life when I'm older, because that's something I've always wanted to do, live an experience and see it. Those are about really all I want to do, though, for traveling, for say, unless I think of something else I really want to go to visit, because really it's just visiting the United States in different areas, and also visiting Canada, and some of the areas I mentioned, like Wisconsin in the United States, and those are just a few of the things I would do. Obviously, I'm going to hit up all 50 states, like go to the Alamo in Texas, uh, maybe hit up the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, because I would really love to see the Grand Ole Opry. And I should pause y'all for a minute, because I got something so cool that I think y'all would like. Thank goodness, I will say in the beginning, as far as I know, but I haven't really looked back, that they haven't been taken down, because I did them out of harmlessness, and I specified that I don't own rights to them either. And I believe I've done some videos of music from this album. And where's the signature? Yeah, see the signatures of the band. And I don't know if I've told the story, but if y'all are familiar with the old school country from the 70s and 80s, and he was also from before. If y'all know who this is, you know he's from the Porter Wagner show, Mac McGahey, or Mac McGaha, I forget how you, I think it's Mac McGaw, actually, or Mac McGahey. It might be Mac McGaw, but anyways, my grandparents back in the 70s, in 80s went to somewhere in there, went to the Grand Ole Opry, and I believe this one is, let me see, what year is it? It should say on it. It's Fireside Studios, obviously, but yeah. Somewhere is the date, I believe, of this. But I could be wrong. I was trying to find an exact date. But anyways, they went to a concert one year at the Grand Ole Opry for this guy and bought his album and even got it signed by the band members, including himself, which I thought was pretty cool. And they kept it for all this time, which I absolutely love. I believe his name is Makmagaha Gaia, I think. And I believe his name is on here somewhere, but anyways, it would just be cool to go to the Grand Ole Opry because my grandparents got to experience it, getting down to the brass tacks and explaining why I was showing this to you, but the fact that my grandparents got to experience the Grand Ole Opry. One thing that would have been cool to experience, but it had left by, I want to say mid-80s, I think. And for those of you who are familiar with the origin story, I believe there's Abandoned Explorer channels that have done on it. Opryland Amusement Park, that was created by Jim Ed Brown himself, the man who wrote Papa Top, which is one of my favorite songs by him. And what did he also do? Little Jimmy Brown. I think one of his songs was called Three Bells, which was basically about Little Jimmy Brown. I think that was kind of like a nod to his life a little bit, and like what happens if he was passed away. What they would probably say at his congregation in his small town if he ended up back there. But don't quote me on that, I could be wrong, but still. Yeah, so if y'all know the origins of that and you've seen that, I think it was pretty much him and some other guy that really wanted to do it, but obviously it did not last. Like all good things must come to an end, they say. But it would have been cool to see Opryland Amusement Park because that would have been something so cool. I actually, if I remember correctly from documentaries I've seen on it, it was him and some like evangelical pastor musician that was doing like gospel music at the time with his wife, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name. And like between the both of them, they were both kind of like spearheads because I think Jim Ed Brown was a silent partner in it. But again, don't quote me on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. But it would just be so interesting to see it would have been interesting to see that, but again, sadly, that's an attraction that's gone. But obviously, those days of country have pretty much gone by. My grandparents' days of the 50s through the 80s. Heck, even really my era, the 90s, have kind of gone by, even though a lot of us are still around and still listening to Billy Ray Cyrus and Alan Jackson and Clint Black and just reminiscing about the old days. Randy Travis, I mean, Garth Brooks and Dunn, Garth Brooks and Ronnie Dunn. You know, we still think about it. We still listen to them if you're like me and have cassette tapes of them. I know I'm kind of stuck in the 90s a little bit because that was my childhood and that was one of my favorite country eras. My childhood of country. Not that I don't like older stuff of my grandparents, but you know, like mainly because I was around in the 90s and experienced it. Like Dwight Yoakam's Guitars and Cadillac is one of my favorite Dwight Yoakam songs. And Keith Whitley. Oh, and Travis Tritt. As I'm thinking of them all. But yeah. So that's something on my bucket list to do is see the Grand Ole Opry and experience Nashville. And maybe go to the birthplace of Bill Monroe to see the Cumberland Highlanders if they have a show at any point. and during that month. Because if you've ever watched the RFD channel, you know what I'm talking about. Or if you live nearby and you already knew about it even before the RFD channel, the Rural Farm Division Network, they used to play the reruns of the Cumberland Highlanders, and I'm pretty sure they still have those. I have no clue. Honestly, I could be blowing smoke. It could be a bygone thing, but I'm pretty sure it's still a happening experience. The Cumberland Highlanders and that program on that stage, but theirs was mainly reruns on RFD, obviously because of I guess partially because of a fire that may have lost some of the lost footage got lost, and what they were able to salvage they wanted to post up, and two because the shows are probably pretty much run the same. But I could be wrong about that. But still, that would be pretty cool to experience that as well at the Cumberland Gap, I believe it is. And also see the birthplace of Ralph Stanley. That would be kind of cool. Those of you who know, with the Clinch Mountain Boys and Reno and Smiley and yeah, Bashful Brother Oswald. So yeah, definitely getting the full Nashville, Tennessee experience would be awesome. Going to the birthplace of Kentucky Fried Chicken, even though I'm not an official big time KFC supporter. If you've seen the documentary that I saw on KFC, you would totally understand why I'm like not a full on supporter of the Colonel Sanders. I mean, the man had literally his mother's secret family recipe to save his butt when his business was going under, and he almost had to sell it because he couldn't keep it open because he couldn't figure out a way to make a true good fried chicken, and he needed his mom to do all the work, and then he took all the credit for it pretty much. Essentially, there was no acknowledgement of, oh, this was my mom who gave me the family secret 11 herbs and spices recipe, and then they tell you can't, even if you knew all the ingredients to the 11 herbs and spices recipe, you wouldn't be able to make it at home for their price. See, the problem with that is, and I could go deep into this, but in my opinion, is that for one, back in the day when he first started the Colonel Sanders with his mom, so 11 herbs and spices secret family recipe, herbs and spices were cheaper, and now it's because they're a corporation and they get a discount on the items they buy for their business, and that's how they make money. So we all know that when they tried to make those commercials recently like that, if you saw them, where it's like, oh, you can't create this for the price we can. No, duh, because you're a corporation that gets every product cheaper unless you grow it yourself, like McDonald's Corporation, who raises their own food, commercialized beef, commercialized potatoes, and they get it at a fraction of what most people would pay for that bulk of stuff, because they're a big corporation who's worked out that deal with farmers that are willing to meet their margins so they can make their money for their fast food corporations. But yeah, it'd still be either way, it'd still be kind of cool to see the birthplace of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and maybe see the location or the spot where the location was for the flagship Kentucky Fried Chicken, just because that'd be kind of neat to be able to drive by the building and see if it was still there. Also, another thing I've always wanted to do all my life amongst travels, but I don't know if I would get to it on this traveling spree, because I really want to visit some less expensive attractions if I can, to save on money, but like little things. Not saying that the ones I want to go to couldn't be expensive to get into, but I'm assuming like the museums and stuff aren't as bad. Is also someday plan a trip to go to Disneyland. I believe it's Disneyland in Orlando, Florida, and then Disney World over in California. It'd be cool to also go to Disney World, but definitely to hit up Disneyland, because if you've seen, and I'm pretty sure I've shown it, but I can show it again someday on a video, is a a plate that I found at the thrift store that's an original from, I think, the 70s or 80s, but it's a Disneyland like collectible plate, you know, those ones that have like the map on them and stuff. And they did different ones. I have one for Amish country, which would also be cool to see the Amish country. So yeah, essentially I just want to take a giant road trip someday when I have the money saved up and go right across the United States and just enjoy life, live it up, and then when I come back to where I live, say that I've lived it up once in my life, because I've been to Maine when I was younger, and I've also been to New York State quite a bit, only because my grandparents had friends over there that we would go and visit a lot, so uh, we would go and see the husband and wife, and the same people of the Model A truck that I will be selling, those people. And so it was always fun to go over to New York State a little bit. And I've also been to Greenwich, New York, or Greenwich. I think it's Greenwich is what they call it, but it could be Greenwich. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for the toy show that usually happens up there. And my grandfather had a really good friend that he made from that show. And I don't know if he's still alive, but and I probably won't mention his name, but this guy was pretty well to do. He had I forget what he had. I think he created a certain like toy line that he did really well with. And so this guy, just to explain to you how well off this guy was, he had like 3 houses, and I think 2 of them were just to house his collection, really. So his main house that he lived in was where he lived, but the other ones he kept them up just to have his collection in. And I don't, like I said, I don't know if he's still alive, how old he was. I think he was older, so I don't know how if he's still alive. And well, I hope he is, and I hope he's doing all right, him and his significant other. Why, I believe he was married and had a wife and kids, and I hope that everyone's well for them. It's been years, but yeah, he had like 3 houses, and 2 of them mainly for his collection. I remember my grandfather telling me this, because I think one time, if I'm not mistaken, they got to be good friends because they were toy collectors and they shared the common bond. And he actually let my grandfather go and visit his houses. I never went with my grandfather, but I just think that's pretty cool. Uh, that was possible, and my grandfather got to see that. And I remember my grandfather saying something about it. And yeah, so needless to say, I've been to New York, so I totally know a lot of the New York scene. I've been in different areas. The only thing I've never been to in New York that would be kind of cool to go to, but I've heard it can be expensive, and you'd have to plan a week for it, is the Syracuse Fair. Because my grandparents, when they were younger, went to the Syracuse Fair quite often. So I think that'd be kind of cool, but I don't know. We see. I may never hit that up. I know, I'm not trying to say this in a mean way, but I know from things my grandparents have told me, at least, that certain areas of New York aren't the greatest as far as like the crime rate, and so to be careful. I would love to go to New York City possibly for a little bit, but I have heard some things about New York City, the homeless population, and there is quite a bit of crime in there. So I don't know. Plus, I know from documentaries I've seen, New York City has a major rat problem, and down in their sewers, an alligator home and stuff, and like a roach problem. And I just don't know if I would like that. Um, I'm sure New York was a slight bit better way back in the day, but obviously with time, anywhere you go, really, you just have to be careful. And obviously, I would, especially if I'm going solo. But just to be able to go solo and enjoy sights and maybe hit New York City, I don't know. I'm just, again, same with Syracuse Fair. I don't know if I will. But even getting to see some small town fairs that may still be going in certain small towns that are still around. Oh, and Mayberry RFD. I mean, I could go on and on about places, but If you've watched Andy Griffin, you know what I'm talking about. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, not that Andy Griffin Show was one of my all-time favorite programs. I will say that. It was an all-time favorite. It was still pretty cool because of the era. And it would be neat to see the town. And see the town that they called Mount Pilot. Um, anyways, yeah. So basically that's my biggest goal, YouTube folks, is just to hit. Oh, and I don't know if I've mentioned it before I close. Other places, if you're familiar with the TV series Charmed, I would love to see the filming location of Charmed and also of Full House, because if y'all are 90s kids, you know what I'm talking about. You grew up watching Full House with Bob Saget, I think his name was, as the dad, Danny Tanner, and Michelle. I'm trying to remember DJ and Michelle, the second one, and DJ was the oldest, I believe. Stephanie and DJ, because if I remember correctly, that the Olsen twins played DJ and Stephanie, or Stephanie and Michelle. I forget how that goes. And Uncle Joey, obviously, and what's her name? I forget who her character's name is, but Uncle Joey's John Stamos' character's wife. Oh, God. And I should know this because I grew up in the 90s. But again, it would just be cool to see the Full House because I've seen it from people doing YouTube videos, but it would just be interesting. And I believe it's in San Francisco, but don't quote me on that. Same with the Charmed house. My deceased brother, for a little while, had stayed in the city of San Francisco because he really wanted to go there, and he worked for a place called Mixed Greens, and so he really enjoyed it when he was staying there, but he was glad when he came back, because I don't know if he had planned on staying there for a long period of time, because I think he went there with one of his girlfriends, came back for a little while, and then the mother of my nephew, his son, they had, when they were together as girlfriend, boyfriend, had decided to go back to San Francisco, and they stayed for a while, and then that's when they had my nephew, and anyways, they'd come back home, so that was a blessing when they came back, and I got to meet my nephew for the first time, and I was so blessed to meet the kid, and I was glad that my brother decided he wanted to come back home to Vermont. And anyways, but yeah, he had a pretty good job there at Mixed Greens for a little while he was staying there. I forget if that was when he was with the mother of my nephew or his previous girlfriend at the time. And anyways, yeah, he really enjoyed it. He always liked doing chef type work, and he was a really good chef, so it was nice to taste his creations. One time he made these oxtail Phillies, he called them, and they were pretty good, actually. But yes, so yeah, it'd be cool to experience that. See the Golden Gate, see Alcatraz. I heard there's a out in the San Fernando Valley, I believe it is, because my mother went to visit him on vacation once when I was younger, and I didn't actually end up going. I should have, but I was younger, and I think I was still in school, actually. And anyways, I might have just been transitioning from middle school to high school, but my mom went to the San Fernando Valley, I believe it is, and they have these where the Hispanic people have a swap meet in the Hispanic quarter and quarter or sector of California, and it'd be kind of cool to go visit that and see what kind of cool treasures could be had, even if I didn't buy anything, just see what the local stuff is made. Because I heard there's a lot of really nice homemade pottery and like different scarves and like cool homemade items, and I'd love to bring gifts back to my family, like cool items from my trip. And so that would be good. And I believe it's also in the San Fernando Valley, definitely, but I'm not 100% sure on that either, is where the wine country is. So it'd be kind of cool to see the vineyards, because to my knowledge, that's really only the biggest place in the United States that has vineyards. I honestly don't know if I'd want to go to Washington, D.C., but I might, because the Smithsonian is there. But with our current political situation, I'll just leave it at that. I have my opinions on things, and there's a lot of upheaval, I believe, in Washington, D.C. these days, and I just don't want to be a part of that. So that's why I don't really want to. Not saying that California is exactly. I've heard that California does have its issues, like any place, obviously, but still, I've heard there is some upheaval in Washington, D.C. currently, and I just wouldn't want to be stuck in that. But I've also thought about going to Alaska, even though there's not really much in Alaska to explore, in my opinion, because I feel like Alaska's mostly wilderness, so there's not like a ton of attractions. Not that you couldn't find things to do, but that might also be a place I would consider going to. But anyways, here I am going on and on about stuff. And who knows, if I do this, maybe I'll invest in a good camera by that time, better than my phone, and have the proper equipment in the setup to charge it. Maybe I'll make a vlog of me around the United States, kind of going to different places. Who knows, maybe I'll end up in Iowa and see the home of the American Pickers. That'd be kind of cool for the channel, just because I used to watch the American Pickers when I was younger, in high school, when it first came out, up until we didn't have cable TV anymore. But I honestly don't know if Antique Archaeology and the American Pickers are really doing much anymore, since from what I heard, quote me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure Frank Fritz had passed away, and so I don't know if there's really much going on with that program now since the death of Frank Fritz, because I know that Frank Fritz and Mike Wolf were pretty much the spearheads of all that, and them being friends together were the reason Antique Archaeology actually became a thing. So I don't know if, I'm sure Mike Wolf to an extent has kept the business going, but you know what I mean, because it's kind of hard when your best friend that you travel on the road with daily passes away, to make content like that in episodes to travel and show picking when you don't have your best friend with you. Are you really going to be in that mentality of, oh, do I really want to do this anymore? But I could be wrong. Like I said, we don't have cable TV anymore. I just watch apps on my Roku, because I get Tubi, I have YouTube, I have some other ones, but I mainly flip between Tubi and YouTube, because I can watch the channels I'm subscribed to that I want to watch, and Tubi because I can watch all the older movies and shows that they don't broadcast on the TV anymore, that I like to watch, that I used to watch when I was younger, that you don't see on television as much anymore. And some new ones that I haven't watched in ages that I forgot about, like Sanford and Son, to name one. But anyways, I've really got to end this video now, because I feel like it's getting so long and it's late. And I hope you enjoyed this update video, YouTube folks, and I'm hoping that maybe someday I can make a blog of me taking my sweet Maggie, when she's all fixed up and restored and roadworthy and reliable, across the way. And as I close this out, here I am thinking of other places like Route 66. I believe they made that TV show Route 66, where the guys are driving in the Corvette back in the 60s. and I think they made a movie about it back in the 80s. Also, oddly enough, with a 57 Corvette. I mean, hey. But yes, as always, keep your heads up, stay strong, all that kind of jazz. Have an excellent time, whatever it is, wherever you are. And as always, if you wouldn't mind to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That is not an obligation. I do not obligate anyone on my channel or that views my channel to do so, but it would be great. You know my standpoint about being a big YouTuber thing and how I don't want that to happen because I don't want the headache of it and the whole while you'll never see me create merch and why you would never see me try to make money off of YouTube, even though I probably could use it for my sweet Maggie, the 89 Dodge Caravan. I won't do it because I have a very prideful set right there that's not what I'm about. I've always tried to live as a very generous, kind-hearted person who gives instead of receives, and I feel like it would be great if it might be great in one way if I received monetary money values from YouTube and established it like everyone else, but then I have to go through the headache. I have to make sure I make you the good videos. I just want to explain this to some of the newcomers before I close this out. And I'm more of a giver than a receiver because I believe in giving instead of receiving. Because I've been a person who's always tried to live a minimalistic lifestyle. As you can see behind me, look at my bureau. It's a hand-me-down bureau from my dad's father with books that have either been handed down to me that were my grandmother's, my mom's mother, or thrifted somewhere, either out of a free pile in front of in front of a bookstore that has a free pile in one of the neighboring counties of the state I live in, or at one of the many thrift stores in the state that I live in, where I bought them and probably paid only $1, maybe $2. Heck, some maybe even only 99 cents. So you know what I mean? It's like I very well live a minimalistic lifestyle and never really had much brand new other than the new bicycle that I have because I've always wanted some new stuff. Obviously, I'm not that closed off to it, but I've always been able to settle and live with older things, so I'm okay with that. So again, just to clarify, that's why you will never see me make merch. That's why you will never see me try to make money off YouTube, because that's not my intentions. My intentions is just to spit out videos when I want to that in a way help me gauge my mind, because I believe in a way I am a lot of people say that I'm more intellectual than I give myself credit for, and I believe in a way that I possibly am, but I always try to play it off because I like to play more like I'm more simplistic, because I don't like to boast about the things I'm smart about, just because I feel like that's not something one should boast about. And just to clarify, I'm not trying to boast about it. I've just had people tell me that, and I do believe that to be quite true, because I've tried to gain knowledge, as I've mentioned, on YouTube channels, but the right knowledge that's helped me through my life to circle and make my life better over time, and more so in the studies that I am very passionate about, like anatomy and physiology and scientifical stuff and history, but mainly scientifical more than history, because I've always been interested in science, physics, anatomy, the psychological side of a human brain, and what makes our brains function the way they do and what makes them tick, and human and animal anatomies and stuff like that. So yeah. So essentially, yeah, what was I going to say? So that's pretty much where it's at. So as always, if you wouldn't mind, like, commenting, and subscribing, as I said. Um, you don't have to comment on my videos, but it would be great if you did and left some constructive criticism. I'm fine with that, as long as it's not like, complete I guess, I don't know how to put it. As long as it's the right constructive criticism, in my opinion, I'm more than happy, and I'm sure most of you would do that anyways. I don't even really need to say that, and I don't know why I did, but um, also just comment in general, what you thought, what you liked, what you didn't. Um, if you wouldn't mind subscribing and hitting the like button, but I don't expect you to hit the like button, but if you wouldn't mind, and subscribing, like I said, and then hitting that notification bell, the full notification if you want to, half if you want to, or no notification, that's fine too. But I feel like if you really want to be engaged with my videos and you hit that subscribe button, you should just hit that full notification, because then when I make a new video, you can actually come and view my new video. So that would work out. As always, I think I said it before, keep your heads up, stay strong, all that kind of jazz, and shine unicorns and rainbows. And I am going to end it here before my brain goes all over the place, because I just noticed myself having a scatterbrain moment. Hey, when you hit your mid-30s, in my opinion, I believe you can justifiably, because I'm 33 now, say, oh, I'm older and I have a scatterbrain moment, and you can get away with it. Just my opinion, because I'm 33. I may not be in my 40s or 50s or 60s and be saying that, but that's just my opinion. But anyways, I will catch you in the next video, YouTube folks, and I hope you enjoyed this one, and I think it's been long enough, and I will see you later. Bye for now.